Samach Bov, second paragraph, Ois A, fifth page of the Maim. Now, to be able to understand where we're holding now, we really need to review some very basic points that we were talking about before. Earlier in the Maimer, we were talking about two categories of miracles. We're talking about in general three, but in general, we're talking about two categories of nisim. There's those miracles that are enclosed in nature, and that itself, he said, there's two categories where it's completely unknown. It's only Oisin the Fleis Gedolos Levade, only Hashem himself knows them. And then there's miracles that if you think about it, like Purim, Hanukkah, you could figure out that the Eibishter is behind it. But it's still enclosed in nature. Then there are miracles that are beyond nature, like Yitzias Mitzrayim, like Kriyas Yamsuf. Those are things that are completely beyond nature. They break nature and so on. And we spoke about how each one, how in general, the miracles that are enclosed in nature, contrary to what we would normally think, the miracles, the nisim that are enclosed in Teva, is really comes from a higher power, and it comes from a greater energy that's able to do so. And we explained that there are two reasons why this is so. One reason is because the miracles that are enclosed in nature must come, that the power of the Ein Sof is so great and reaches so far that instead of when it meets up with nature, it breaks nature, it is rather so infinite that it's so beyond worlds that it could even reach the worlds itself, which means that it must come from something beyond the limitations of Bligvul and Vul, beyond the limitations of infinite and finite, and therefore it could even be revealed in this world, meaning the miracles the way they are enclosed in nature. Another explanation about miracles enclosed in nature being greater than the miracles that are breaking nature, beyond nature, because here is where you see that Hashem actually controls and manipulates nature. In miracles above nature, it says either me or nature. One of them has to move. It's like the example we gave of the chess game. I don't like the way you're playing. It's my board. I'll just take my pieces and go home. But in a miracle, it's enclosed in nature, I am showing that I control nature, like the chess champion that can control the board and could work within the rules of nature, so that the nature itself should be according to his will. Now, to further elaborate upon that, he introduced a well-known Akedah that's brought down in many Mamorim of Chassidus, that to explain the difference between Hashem's might, the way it's revealed in miracles, versus Hashem's might, the way it's revealed in nature. And Hashem's might, the way it's revealed in miracles, that's obvious. But Hashem's might, the way it's revealed in nature, is in the constancy and consistency and the ongoing power of the creation. Generally, something that's made from something else has like built-in obsolescence. Eventually, it will weaken. Eventually, it will cease. The fact that it doesn't weaken, the fact that nature goes on constantly and consistently, like it says, "Chazakim kiyom hibaram." So over there, we see the power of the Ein Sof that's revealed in the fact that nature can go on without an end. Nature doesn't weaken. Nature doesn't cease. So that is also a power of the infinite. And therefore, there is, again, an advantage and a specialness in the revelation of Hashem in nature, not miracles enclosed in nature, but in nature itself, because you have this joining with nature, the connecting with nature, or the connecting with boundaries, and over there in the boundaries and in the world that you can have over there in boundaries, you can have the. And then he goes into different spiritual levels where they come from. One is higher than the other. That technical aspect is not that much important. Okay, now is where we left off. Now he's going to take that idea of the power of the infinite that's functioning and revealed in limitations in nature is a greater thing than the power of the infinite that just breaks nature. So that contrast between miracles and nature can also be used to understand the difference between the miracles that are above nature and break nature versus the miracles that are enclosed in nature. Let's see it inside. Finally, we can read it inside again. Ois Hey, the 5th page of the Mimer, page Kuf Samach Vav. Hine al pi anal sivdal, according to what we just now said in the 4th Ois of the Mimer. Shagam hatamidis shavan hog satev. Also, the constancy that's in the running of nature. That fact that nature goes on constantly and consistently. It's through drawing down this infinite light that's unbounded, that's beyond the worlds. And the advantage of miracles is that it is through that comes down the revelation of the infinite light of Hashem. That is the infinite light of Hashem itself. That's beyond being mislapshis bigvul. It's beyond becoming enclosed in boundaries. Yes, loima. So based on that difference in nature versus miracles, we could say the shnei asugim shebenisim, the two types of miracles. Nisim shalomaylam atava, miracles are beyond nature. Benisim amalaboshim batava, miracles that are enclosed in nature. Heim shnei aifanim begilu oirin sof habligvul shalomaylam mislapshis bigvul. These are two modes, two types in the revelation of the infinite light of the Eibishter, the unbounded light of the Eibishter, that's beyond becoming enclosed in boundaries. Because we already said that nature is about the Ein Sof that's enclosed in boundaries. And that has to do with Kav, we spoke about as far as the level is concerned, that's rooted in Tiferes Hanelam, etc. But the miracles that are above nature, miracles in general, we said before, is the infinite light of Hashem that's beyond becoming enclosed in boundaries. So since there are two types of such miracles, so there's two ways or two divisions in this infinite light of Hashem that's beyond becoming enclosed in boundaries. Well, Pisa, middle of first paragraph, according to what we explained earlier in the third Aysonamayim. What is the advantage of miracles that are enclosed in nature over the miracles that break nature is? The revelation of the infinite light of Blikvul that's enclosed in the boundaries of the world itself, we said. So you have a joining of two opposites in a way, the infinite with the boundary of the world. It's the fact that in miracles there's also the idea and the advantage of the way nature runs. In other words, the advantage of the miracles that are enclosed in nature concerning the advantage of the nisim itself, of the miracles itself, the quality of the miracles itself. The revelation of the infinite light that's unbounded, that's beyond becoming enclosed. That in those miracles that are enclosed in nature is revealed. The fact that the infinite light, the unbounded light that's beyond becoming enclosed, it rules and controls nature. It's also the way nature itself acts according to his will. Like we said, there are two explanations about the advantage of miracles that are enclosed in nature. So here he's pointing out that this quality that the nature itself is acting now according to Hashem's will. It's not like running on its own. So this is something that's expressed in the miracles, that it's the enclosed in nature, and the fact of the advantage and the quality of the miracles itself. That even though it's a type of miracles is something that's an infinite light of Hashem, that's beyond becoming enclosed, with the fact that's beyond becoming enclosed, that's the very nature of miracles. He causes that the nature itself is running according to his will. Now he says, Valdetta says, second paragraph in Ois Hey. Is also concerning the miracles that are beyond nature. Also, the advantage of these miracles, both that the miracles are revealed, so the Rebbe is going to like go a little bit different than what he said before. Before he said when the miracles are enclosed in nature, so then you can see how it rules over nature. But what you're forfeiting is that by doing that, you don't see it open. You need to come, like you said before, you need to think into it, you need to meditate, you need to figure out, oh yeah, Purim was a miracle also. Hanukkah was a miracle also. But the miracles are above nature. There you don't have to meditate. There you see openly Hashem's hand. On the other hand, we said you don't really see an expression of the Eibishter ruling over nature. He's breaking the nature, not ruling over nature. So the Rebbe is going to say, even in supernatural miracles, even in miracles that are beyond nature, you also have, in one aspect, in one regard, you have this revelation of the infinite light of Hashem that controls and rules over nature is also revealed. So he explains as follows. Third line in the paragraph. In the miracles that are enclosed in nature, nature remains nature. The rules of nature weren't broken. In what way, in what manner is it expressed that the infinite light of Hashem is ruling over nature? That the manner in which nature is running is following Hashem's will. Hashem wanted that the Yidden should be saved in the case of Purim or in the case of Hanukkah. Nature followed the will of Hashem. So the manner in which nature operated was in accordance with Hashem's will. That's where you see the Ein Sof's relationship with nature when there's miracles enclosed in nature. On the other hand, the miracles that are beyond nature, when miracles break nature, like splitting of the sea, the 10 Makkahs, Yitzias Mitzrayim, over there, the nature becomes broken. It's nullified. It loses its existence in face of Hashem's will. The control and the rulership of the infinite light of the Eibishter is in the very being of nature. It breaks nature. It doesn't just make sure that nature follows his wishes and his will. He totally does away with nature. He breaks nature. It's in the very existence of nature. So the Rebbe explains what's the difference in these two ways of the Ein Sof ruling over nature. We could say that the difference between these two types of miracles and their root in their root in the spiritual realms, the Benisim Amlabashim Betava, Gili Ein Sof Abligvul, Kimaisha Shayech, Venoisim Makim Ligvul. Those miracles that are enclosed in nature is a revelation of the infinite light of Hashem. But in the revelation of the infinite light of Hashem, it's a type of revelation of godliness that allows, it's an infinite aspect, but it allows for the finite. It relates to the finite. It has still some type of relationship and gives room for the finite to exist. Therefore, in comparison to the revelation of this light, there's the existence of nature, which is boundaries. But the boundaries, they are now being molded and following the will of the infinite light of Hashem. And the miracles are beyond nature. It's a revelation of the infinite light of Hashem. That's unbounded. That's completely beyond the concept of boundaries. The whole idea of boundaries and being finite in comparison to this level doesn't exist. There's no room in the believable perspective for the finite. Therefore, when that level of Hashem's believable comes to the fore, nature completely, when this revelation of light comes to being, the entire nature becomes nullified. Similar to what's explained in a different place concerning will and intellect. Will and intellect is used as a metaphor, as an analogy. What we speak about, the light of Sovev Kalam is likened to will. The light of Amal Kalam is likened to intellect, which is Sovev Amal is related to the root of Nisim comes from Sovev Kalam. The root of nature comes from Amal. Now, the way the will can interact with intellect is in two ways. Just like the way the miracles or the infinite light of Hashem could impact the mamali and the nature. The fact that we say that there is a time when my will is so strong that it even bends the intellect to the will and makes that the intellect should also understand and come up with a reason for the will. But that level of will, it's only a ray of the will, because the ray of the will still allows for room for intellect. Therefore, since it allows room for intellect, it will function in tandem with intellect. It will use intellect in and together with the will. But the will itself, the essence of the will itself, doesn't come down in the intellect. And therefore, in that level of will, in the essence of the will, there is no reason and no explanation for the will. Let's go on another paragraph. Despite our explaining that when miracles are beyond nature, it completely nullifies, and therefore it is the utmost revelation of the bleak Gvul, because it doesn't even allow for Gvul to stand, whereas the miracles are enclosed in nature is the level of Gvul that the level of bleak Gvul that allows for Gvul. Still in all, there's still an advantage in the miracles that are enclosed in nature. Specifically in these miracles is revealed the control and the rulership of the infinite light of Hashem over the manner of nature itself, because, like we said before, it's directing it, and therefore it's working with it. Now he's going to explain, so what's the advantage of it? We could say that the difference between these two types of miracles, the one that's enclosed in nature and the one's beyond nature, it's similar to the bittul of the supernal unity, meaning bittul memetzias. There's no world, there's no existence, all there is Hashem. I have no will, I have no desires, all there is Hashem, or the bittul of Kabbalah soil. I have my wills, I have my interests, but I'm being mevatel my yesh. I just do what I'm supposed to do. The fact that in comparison to revelation of the infinite light that's without boundary, the nature becomes completely nullified from its existence, which is expressed in nisim shalamayim matava and miracles beyond nature. While it's similar to the nullification of the higher unity, bittul b'mitzias, otherwise known as completely, the person is completely bottled. And where does it, what type of avoida leads into such a type of bittul b'mitzias? A boy, there is bonus, the kul kamek lochshiv. When he meditates, top of Kuf Samach Zayin, when he meditates into the fact how everything compared to the Eibishter is insignificant totally, so that evokes by him also a complete nullification of his existence, similar to Nisim Shalamaylam Atava. No existence whatsoever, nothing there. Yichud Elah, Bitl Mitzi. Zesh Atava Nisha B'Mitzius Umekol Mokum Eifen Hanagasi Hu. Like if Yichuk Yivit Chunas Atava, Elef Pirit Soynis, but if the fact that nature remains the way it is, but still in all despite remaining the way it is, the way it runs is not according to the laws and characteristics of nature, but rather it's running according to his will, which is Nisim Hamalubashim Beteva, which is the miracles that are enclosed in nature. While Derech Habitl the Kabbalah soil, it's similar to a bittul of just doing it because I was told to do it so. Though he remains in his very own being, just like the nature remains nature. To such a degree, does he remained in his own being. We say that the actual nature of a servant is to be hefker, not to be under any constraints, not to have any limitations, not to be told what to do. Despite the fact that he wants to do whatever he wants to do, still in all Mikal Malcolm Hanagasi, but like the still know the way he actually acts is not according to his will, but rather according to the will of his master. So that type of Yichud Ilah versus Yichud Atah, Bitlayesh, is the same difference, like the Nisim that break nature, that are beyond nature, which permeates the entire nature, like we said. It completely does away with nature, just like Bitla Mitzias totally does away with the person's Mitzias. Whereas Bitla Yesh is about, even though I'm a Mitzias, I am still bottled, just like even though there is nature, the miracle of the Eibishter operates through nature. And the following Ois is going to talk about the advantage of each one. Any questions before we go on? By the way, it's going to get easier. This was the most complex Ois of the Maimer. Now it's going to be going downhill.
Does this correspond to the spiritual worlds? Like one is from Bria and one's from the Tzila?
So it corresponds to different levels of the Oren Sof Shalifnat Tzimtzum. In Oren Sof Shalifnat Tzimtzum, there is the root for the Koyach HaGvul, and then there's the level. Or to keep it simpler, you can go according to what we just now spoke about. There's the Oid HaMamal Kol Almin, there's the Oid HaSoviv Kol Almin, and there is the level that's higher even than Soviv, because even Soviv Kol Almin, we often say, it relates to worlds. It's Soviv Kol Almin. The world still exists in regards to Soviv. Then there's the level of Kula Kamek Shiv, like we're talking about, that's the meditation. And Kula Kamek Shiv brings him to a level of Nisim that are beyond nature, a level of Bitlam Mitzias. So Kula Kamek Shiv, a level where everything before him is completely non-existent. That is the most highest level in Ruchnistic levels, where the Nisim Shalamayim Atava comes from. That's a simpler way to keep it. There is different levels in the Iron of Shemat Simtzum, but he's not going there concerning this distinction that he's talking about now. Okay, page 6 in your copies, Kuf Samach Zayin Oizvav. So now he's going to explain the advantage. Why would this type of avoida of Kabbalah's oil be greater than the avoida that's likened to Nisim beyond nature, that totally is Metzias Sabbat? So he's going to contrast each one's advantage. What's known, the advantage in the bit of the upper unity, meaning bittul mitzias, he shabittul b'chol mitziusai. His bittul is in his entire being. Nothing remains in the person that is not bottled. Every part of his being, his will, his intellect, his emotions, everything is bottled today. He's not just doing it with his hands what he's supposed to. Not like the bittul of accepting the yoke of heaven, that over there it's only concerning action. I want to do my thing. My mind maybe thinks differently. My heart has different emotions. But when it comes to doing, I do what I'm supposed to do. So obviously, qualitatively in a certain way, this is more all-encompassing. The bittul of Metzias, the bittul of Yichudei law is much greater. But on the other hand, the advantage in the bittul of accepting the yoke of heaven, bittul ayesh, is the bittul itself. It's a true bittul that's not at all connected with the person's existence, meaning I don't bring myself into the equation. Since myself doesn't agree, so I'm in a way more nullifying myself than when my entire self is with the program. Then it's me serving the Eibishter. Here, I've done away with my me entirely. The bittul of the Yichudei law, since it comes about, like we said before, that he meditates on the idea that everything before the Eibishter is like nothing. So he recognizes and feels that everything before him is like nothing considered. The bittul is connected and bound up with the existence of the person, his recognition, and therefore it's not a true bit. And the bittul of the accepting the yoke of heaven, that he accepts upon himself to fulfill the command of the Eibush. Even when the command is against his will, similar to a servant that he's obligated, that he must fulfill the will of his master. What's the idea of this bittul? This bittul is saying, I don't go according to what my mitzvah is. So hareza bittul amiti, there's a real bittul. There's me, and I put that me totally aside to do what the Eibishter wants. Shlomo the Rebbe says, with this we can understand the advantage of miracles that are enclosed in nature over miracles beyond nature. Similar to this way of in the micro of the person, so too it's in the macro of the Eibishter's relationship with the world. The miracles that are enclosed in nature, though how nature is nullified to the infinite light of the Eibishter in these miracles. So it's only that nature is running in accordance with his will, but not the very nature is broken, like we mentioned before, as opposed to miracles beyond nature. Still in all, because by the laws of nature and the characteristics of nature, there's really no room to fit these two together. How can we say that nature should run in such a way of a miracle? Therefore, the change, the miracle that forces its way on the running of nature, I'm sorry. And the change of a miracle that's enclosed in nature, it's because our self shoylet al teva manix teva kertzoynitz, because the infinite light of Hashem rules over nature and runs nature according to his will. So how the nature becomes sublimated in these miracles is a true bittul, because despite its natural tendencies, it's still following the Eibishter. As opposed to miracles that are above nature, it's either me or the Eibishter. The Eibishter breaks me, fine, I'm gone. But it's not about me putting my meanness aside, which is to be found in the miracles that are clothed in nature. Any questions?